Muy buenos días.
Good morning. We're going to get started. I would first like to recognize my country recognizes all women who have committed to strengthen relationships between states, the defense of human rights, and a more just and inclusive world. Women diplomats. As the host of the 56th General Assembly of the Organization of American States, OAS, Panama recognizes and celebrates the contribution of women diplomats around the world, and certainly those from my country, whose work improves cooperation and understanding between our countries. On behalf of my president, Jose Raul Molino, his administration, and on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we would like to offer our most sincere congratulations and thanks to women who serve our countries and the international community through diplomacy, inspiring all generations. This date must reaffirm our commitment to significant and equal participation of women in decision-making decisions and in carrying out international affairs. I must confess that at home, multilateralism has its limits. There are 3 boys and 3 girls in my home. My wife and 2 brilliant girls. And I have to say, resolutions are approved by majority, and the right to a vote barely exists. The 3 women impose with a combination of wisdom and love. And as a good diplomat, I understand that the best strategy is to recognize when your counterpart is right. Happy International Day of Women in Diplomacy. Your Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, with that, we officially convene the 3rd plenary session of the 56th General Assembly. With that, we shall start with the presentation of the annual report of the Commission for Integral Development. And I would like to pass the floor to Ambassador Edison Lanson, permanent representative from Uruguay and President of the Council. Thank you very much, Mr. President of, Mr. Chair of the General Assembly, Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Republic of Panama, Javier Martinez Acha Vasquez, and congratulations once again on this excellent General Assembly. Greetings to the Secretary General, Albert Ramdin, the Assistant Secretary General, Ambassador Laura Hill, ladies and gentlemen, Ministers of Foreign Affairs, distinguished heads of delegation. I would like to join as well from the chair of the CD to congratulate women as well for their participation in diplomacy. And I would have the honor to appear before the General Assembly as chair of the Inter-American Council on Integral Development and to present our annual report for 2025-2026. This is a unique moment for our council because this is the year when we commemorate its 30th anniversary. 3 decades ago, the Protocol of Managua established the CIDI with a conviction that is still very valid. There is no democracy that can last without robust development, nor stability that can continue with exclusion and inequality. Development is an interdependent pillar in the search for peace, democracy, and hemispheric security. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in an uncertain economic time where global chains, energy transition, and accelerated change in technological transformation are occurring. In this scene, integral development is no longer aspirational. It is about the immediate resilience of our societies. The peoples of the Americas demand action and concrete results, and that has been our guiding star throughout this period. In the second semester of 2025, under the presidency of Suriname, the Council focused on developing capacities to improve commerce in the Americas as a driver for inclusive growth. There were 5 thematic dialogues, from formalization of MSMEs to preparing for fintechs and electronic business or online business. Out of that, we were able to create a draft for a roadmap that will allow our countries to move forward in a world that is going through extraordinary change. In the first semester of 2026, under the presidency that I have had the honor of carrying out, we looked at energy security, because energy security is a key material for development. We cannot have industrialization, digitalization, climate resilience without safe, accessible, and clean energy. We talked about critical infrastructure, regional energy integration, efficiency and diversification of sources of energy, the abundance of critical minerals that are found in the Americas, and the historic opportunity to create added value. The member states expressed their desire to join this economy using those minerals, but not as mere exporters, rather as parts of the added value chain. We close this cycle with the system in Haiti, because solidarity must include the most complex crises that we face. From this work, we created a strategic paper looking to prepare for our next meeting of the American Meeting of Ministers on Sustainable Development under the leadership of Panama. In this period, we also focused on institutional strengthening. We renewed the regulatory framework of the Council. We looked at continuity in 9 different ministerial sectors, and we worked together with Ambassador Isabelle Valois as Executive Secretary for Integral Development. I would like to encourage her and wish her the best as she moves to the SEDI, and I want to recognize her excellent work throughout this year. Mr. Chair, at the meeting the 12th of June, the CD agreed to elevate this consideration to the General Assembly. There are 2 points that we want to share. The first is the declaration, the draft declaration on the commemoration of the 30th anniversary of the CD, which reaffirms the Council as the primary forum for the Inter-American System for Dialogue, Cooperation, and Promotion of Integral Development. The second is a draft resolution advancing hemispheric initiatives in integral development, which orders and projects mandates that will guide the work done by the Council according to the priorities set by the member states. I would like to pass this for your consideration to the Assembly with the conviction that investing in the pillar of development is investing in democratic stability and prosperity for our entire hemisphere. I will conclude by thanking all the delegations and the General Secretary for your commitment, your constructive spirit, and reaffirming before you that the CIDI will continue to be a space where the Americas turn dialogue into cooperation and cooperation into results for our people. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this report, Ambassador Lanza. 3 decades after its creation, the Inter-American Council for Integral Development continues to be relevant as a key forum for building consensus related to social development, economic development, and sustainable development for our nations. It reminds us that peace and democratic stability are indivisible from the well-being of our peoples. I would like to express my recognition to the General Assembly and the presidencies of Suriname, or the chairs of Suriname and Uruguay, as well as the vice chairship of Brazil and Belize for their leadership in this organ. I would like to offer the floor to anyone who has questions about the report. If there are no comments, then the chair would suggest that the General Assembly take note of the annual report of the Inter-American Council for Integral Development, reiterating once again our congratulations to this organ for its 30th anniversary. We shall now pick up our dialogue from the heads of delegation on the topic Firm Multilateralism in Defense of Democracy, Hemispheric Security, and the Stability of the American States. I would like to remind you that interventions should not go past 6 minutes, as we have agreed, in order to guarantee that all member states can participate. With that, I am honored to pass the floor to the delegation from Suriname.
Martinez Ascafasquez, Secretary General of the OAS, Mr. Ambassador Albert Ramdin, Assistant Secretary General, Honorable Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Heads of Delegations, distinguished guests and delegates. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to participate in this 56th regular session of the General Assembly of the Organization of American States. At the outset, I extend sincere appreciation to you, Mr. Chair, and dear colleague, your government, and the people of Panama for their warm hospitality and excellent organization of this assembly. As Panama commemorates the bicentennial Congress of 1826, we are reminded that the ideas and the ideals of unity, cooperation, and collective action continue to guide our hemisphere today. The theme of this General Assembly is timely. For the Republic of Suriname, multilateralism remains the most effective means of addressing the complex challenges that we need to solve by working together. A rule-based international order grounded in respect for sovereignty, international law, and peaceful coexistence remains essential for safeguarding peace, security, and sustainable development. Democracy is one of the hemisphere's greatest achievements. Yet respect for the rule of law and meaningful participation by citizens. It equally requires that we address the social and economic conditions that undermine public trust and fuel instability. Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, today our region faces a range of interconnected challenges, including transnational organized crime, illicit trafficking, cybercrime, environmental crimes, illegal mining, and the growing impacts of climate change. These threats do not respect national borders. Left unaddressed, they can weaken democratic institutions, destabilize societies, and hinder development. This requires stronger regional cooperation, enhanced information sharing, and collective action to build safer and more resilient societies. For many countries in our hemisphere, security is increasingly multidimensional. It includes food security, energy security, environmental security, disaster resilience, and economic stability. In this regard, my country, Suriname, stands ready to contribute together with regional partners to strengthening energy and food security. Emerging developments in our energy sector, coupled with investments in infrastructure, agriculture, and digital transformation, create opportunities for inclusive growth, economic diversification, and regional resilience. But also, climate change remains one of the defining challenges of our time. Small island development and low-lying coastal states continue to face disproportionate impacts despite contributing to the least to global emissions. Suriname is proud to be one of the world's few carbon negative countries and among the most forested, with more than 90% forest coverage on Earth. The future of the hemisphere is in our hands, but it will depend on our ability to transform common challenges into collective actions. Let us strengthen our commitment to democracy, reinforce multilateral cooperation, and work together to build a hemisphere that is more secure, more resilient, prosperous, and inclusive. The success of our organization, the OAS, but also other regional organizations such as the CARICOM, will ultimately be measured not by the resolutions we adopt, but by the positive impact we have for our peoples and the people of the Americas. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Suriname. Le damos la palabra.
With that, we'll pass the floor to Antigua and Barbuda, Ambassador Torona Sanders from Antigua Barbuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Antigua and Barbuda comes to this General Assembly with hope. That hope is grounded in our conviction that despite its challenges, this organization serves the people of the Americas and remains essential to our hemisphere. The OAS reflects a commitment made in Bogota in 1948 that the nations of this hemisphere, regardless of size, wealth, or power, would work together in pursuit of peace, democracy, development, and the equal dignity of their peoples. That commitment has not always been honored, but it has never been abandoned. Today, multilateralism is on the strain. Too often, unilateral action is chosen over collective solutions. The OAS is the only institution where almost all independent states of this hemisphere meet regularly for dialogue, cooperation, and collective action. And there is no substitute for it. For this reason, Antigua and Barbuda reaffirms without reservation its commitment to this organization and to the Charter principles that guide it. We will continue to support the OAS in practice by applying its rules consistently, safeguarding its independence, and ensuring that it serves all member states fairly. Mr. President, the independence of the Secretary General and of the international civil service that the General Secretariat represents is a fundamental principle of the Charter. It is essential to the institutional balance of this organization and to its ability to serve all member states impartially. Of course, accountability is equally essential. However, it must be exercised through established mechanisms and in accordance with the Charter, the general standards, and the collective decision of member states. Mr. President, we must also address the financial condition of this organization. The regular fund is under significant strain. Its reserves intended to protect against unforeseen shocks have been depleted. To maintain basic operations, the General Secretariat has relied on limited internal cash resources. The approved budget ceiling for 2027 is $95.6 million. In real terms, this is lower than the organization's budget 15 years ago. The proposed 2027 program budget increases funding by approximately $2.5 billion over 2026, largely to address inflation and cost of living adjustments. It does not address the $16.7 million in unfunded and underfunded needs identified by the General Secretariat. Nor does it restore the reserve subfund or resolve the gap between mandates and available resources. Mr. Chairman, Antigua and Barbuda supported this budget to ensure continuity of operations, but not because the budget resolved the organization's structural financial challenges. Now, we respect the collective process that produced the budget, and we recognize the fiscal constraints faced by many member states. Nonetheless, this remains a budget designed to sustain operations, not to fully deliver on agreed mandates. This is not only a technical issue, it is a political one that requires political decisions. Member states that value the OAS must be prepared to sustain it. Chronic underfunding has very real consequences. It affects anti-corruption and security programs, climate resilience initiatives, technical cooperation, human rights mechanisms, and support for countries facing exceptional challenges. Mr. President, Antigua and Barbuda supports continued reform of the organization, including transparency, accountability, and the effective use of resources. But reform must strengthen the organization as a whole and proceed through the procedures established collectively and jointly by member states. The people of Haiti continue to face unacceptable levels of violence and insecurity. Women and girls in particular remain at grave risk. The Haitian authorities have requested international security assistance. Antigua and Barbuda therefore supports the United Nations authorized gang suppression force and all efforts to restore public order. The international community, particularly countries of the Americas, must also act in a coordinated manner against transnational criminal networks operating in Haiti. We must disrupt drug trafficking, illicit financial flows, and money laundering that emanates from Haiti. We must identify, sanction, and prosecute those who finance and support gang activity wherever they operate, inside or outside of Haiti. If we do not stop the money flow, we will not stop the gangs. Greater attention must be given to maritime surveillance, coastal monitoring, and border security, because the flow of weapons, ammunition, drugs, and criminal actors into and out of Haiti must be disrupted. Stronger controls are essential to weaken the gangs, prevent Haiti from being used as a transit point, and to deny criminal networks a critical source of revenue. We must act together to restore security and democratic governance in the interest of Haiti, and of the hemisphere as a whole. Mr. President, the most valuable asset of this organization is this permanent forum for dialogue that it provides. In a diverse hemisphere, a rules-based space where governments engage with mutual respect, even in disagreement, is indispensable. This forum should be strengthened, not weakened. Antigua and Barbuda values this organization and believes it can do more for the peoples of the Americas. But doing more requires an OAS that is consensus-driven, adequately financed, accountable, modern, and responsive. Antigua and Barbuda chooses an OAS that is strong, independent, properly resourced, and representative of all of the peoples of the Americas, whose states choose to be part of this common endeavor. We believe, sir, that this is the right choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Ronald Sanders. Thank you, Antigua y Barbuda. Tiene la palabra.
Now I pass the floor to Paraguay in place of Argentina, His Excellency Victor Verdún Vitar. Thank you very much, Mr. President of the General Assembly, Foreign Affairs Ministers, Heads of Delegation, Mr. General Secretary, Ms. Assistant General Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, all. First of all, congratulations to our colleagues, the female diplomats, today as we celebrate them. I would like to thank Panama for your hospitality, for hosting us in this very significant date framework, the 200th anniversary of the Amphitheatonic Congress of Panama. Unity in the Americas calls us not just to commemorate, but to ask ourselves, frankly, how much have we progressed? Even more so, what is left to build? That sincerity asks or requires that we face uncomfortable questions. The OAS faces challenges, progressive erosion of its credibility, and serious financial challenges. That is what we are facing now. And it requires immediate measures that will ensure the effective functioning of this organ, as well as fund reforms that will allow reforms of the organization itself that will allow us to regain our reputation. The ideological differences between our countries that exist will always continue to exist because they are inherent in democratic life. Our challenge is not to eliminate differences, but to stop them from paralyzing us. We need a more pragmatic focus. Our citizens do not expect unanimity, but they do expect results. And Paraguay believes in the OAS. But believing is not enough. We must act. If this organization has recovered its protagonism, we will be able to show that we can lead, that we can prevent, not just react. I would like to highlight the importance of dialogue with civil society. That is a space where we can have dialogue about democracy, human rights, security, and many other important issues, which are a bridge for our organization and our societies. We have been working under a new format for interacting with civil society, and the dynamic has been very interesting. However, we must guarantee equality and balance of participation and in interventions. There were representatives that were able to speak without any time limit, and others who were emphatically limited to 2.5 minutes. And I mention this as just a constructive point for those who build these dialogues. It was a very positive dynamic. It was interesting. But we need to maintain balance in the participation. I really thought that in this forum, we would all be treated equally. But there were clearly some who were more equal than others. Dear delegates, Paraguay reaffirms the defense of human rights, rule of law, fundamental liberties, and international law, which are the fundamental bases of this organization. In this same line of thought, we hold to our constitutional protections, sovereignty, family. We will continue to promote this in all spaces where it is necessary. Security is also a central issue for the government of President Santiago Peña. Drug trafficking, organized crime, human trafficking, corruption, and cyber crime cross borders faster than we can currently respond. These crimes we cannot fight them alone. We need joint action from all of our security organizations, intelligence organizations, and justice organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, lasting stability starts with democracy. Paraguay expresses its support for the legitimately elected government of Bolivia as it faces systematic destabilization efforts. To Venezuela, we are to begin a process of democratic normalization, and all members are called to walk this path with our sister country. Cuba and Nicaragua continue to be open continue to not be open to the democratic values of the region. Their regimes have shown repression, and in the face of this, silence cannot be the answer. We cannot talk about democracy here and then remain silent as people are jailed for their political beliefs or exiled. We must seek full democracy in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. We cannot forget or look over the situation in Haiti. Their people have been suffering under violent gangs for many years, and the international response has been insufficient in the face of such suffering. There is no easy, quick response, but we must ensure that rhetorical solidarity becomes a roadmap with goals and dates. Dear Chancellor Javier Martinez Acha, Secretary General, we do not want this General Assembly to just be commemorative. We want to move towards a more relevant OAS, a more believable OAS, and an OAS that is more useful for our countries. Paraguay reaffirms its commitment to that goal. Thank you.
Gracias, Paraguay.
Thank you, Paraguay. We give the floor now to Bahamas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be here in Panama, and you're the guardians and protectors and owners of the canal. Nice to be back. Thank you, Secretary General. Our support for you as a CARICOM national is strong. You're an important symbol to our nationals of all of our countries. You've brought a ray of hope to the region, and on this International Day for Women Diplomats, I see that Guyana has put forward another CARICOM national to be Secretary General of the UN. It didn't escape me when there was the summit recently between the two most powerful countries in the world that there were no women at the table. So we have some way to go. We believe in the Bahamas and the rule of law, uplifting the oppressed, equity and justice for all, regardless of race, color, creed, or national origin. We support the lawful right of all people to migrate lawfully to another country and return to their country. Thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Bahamians and CARICOM nationals have done so and contributed to the rich tapestry of all of our neighbors. Thank you to OAS for the observer mission for the general election, which we held on the 12th of May this year, and the incumbent government of Prime Minister Philip Davis was returned. The Bahamian people expressed their will freely and resoundingly. We in the Bahamas believe in the judicious use of power. This requires an understanding that the world belongs to all, the rich and the powerful, the strong and the weak. The strong must have a moral compass that ensures that all survive. And that is why Organization of American States was invented, and the lessons of history compel us today to support its continued existence. The continued existence requires us to pay our bills to the organization, and the organization must manage its affairs in an equitable manner. The lessons of history compel us to support the value of multilateralism, that it is better to keep talking than shooting guns, and that we do not interfere in the internal affairs of other countries except by invitation. In this regard, we support the work in Haiti, and we are examining what role we can play in Bolivia to support the legitimately elected government there. We support the Cuban people and the right to independence and territorial integrity, and their right to participate in the world economy, the work of the hemisphere, and the right to eat and health care. We apply the same values to Haiti that struck the first blow for African people in the world for freedom. We agree that there is still a need in this world for affirmative action and reparations for past discrimination against people of African descent. For us, climate change is existential, and we call upon all nations to accept the science and take the steps to pay for adaptation and mitigation and end the reliance on fossil fuels. Now, I'd like to end with this. There's a moral tale to be told, and I often repeat this to my constituents about the judicious use of power. The Star Wars trilogy is instructive. Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. And these three movies show you in this trilogy that the powerful can be brought down by the small and meek. That is why we in the Bahamas argue for the judicious use of power. And there's this aphorism. People who say that a small voice doesn't matter have obviously never spent the night in a dark room with a mosquito. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, dear friend. I pass the floor to Barbados. Tiene la palabra Barbados.
Barbados, you have the floor. My friend Christopher Sinclair.
Mr. President of the General Assembly, heads of delegation, Mr. Secretary General Ramdin, Madam Assistant Secretary General, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Barbados is honored to join the nations in this hemisphere in Panama, the bridge of the world and the hub of the Americas, for this 56th General Assembly of the Organization of American States. We thank the government and people of Panama for their warm hospitality and for convening us at this historic moment. Panama reminds us that geography can connect, history can instruct, and political courage can build bridges where division threatens to prevail. Mr. President, our hemisphere enters the second quarter of this century facing profound challenges. We continue to grapple with rising debt, climate shocks, food insecurity, transnational crime, democratic pressures, and widening inequality. Yet beneath these challenges lies a deeper concern, a growing crisis in institutions, that is the trust in institutions, and in our collective abilities to deliver solutions. The question before us, therefore, is not whether the Americas possesses sufficient resources or knowledge. The question is whether we possess the political will to act together. This is why the theme of this conference is so timely. Firm multilateralism is not a diplomatic preference. It is a necessity. No nation, regardless of its size or power, can effectively confront today's interconnected challenges alone. For small states, multilateralism remains the principal guarantee that rules, rather than power, shape outcomes. It is the foundation upon which sovereign equality, participation, and international cooperation rests. Mr. President, for the Caribbean, the climate crisis represents the immediate test of our times. Climate vulnerability is no longer solely an environmental concern. It is a developmental challenge, a fiscal challenge, an energy challenge, and increasingly a security challenge. Every major hurricane or storm can erase years of economic progress in a matter of hours. And this reality is why Barbados continues to champion reform of the international financial architecture through the Bridgetown Initiative and other actions. Countries must not be forced deeper into debt simply to protect themselves from climate impacts they did little to create. We must align debt sustainability, resilience, resilient financing, insurance, and investment into a coherent framework that allows vulnerable countries not to merely survive the shocks, but to emerge stronger from them. In this regard, Mr. President, I wish to draw this Assembly's attention that only yesterday, Prime Minister Mia Amor Motley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, along with the President General of the OPEC Fund, launched what is called the V2V Compact, from vulnerability to viability. Barbados, in its capacity as chair of the Climate Vulnerable Forum and its V20 finance ministers, set out this compact, which aims to mobilize much needed flow and affordability of development finance to economies that have contributed the least economies and 15 development partners in the financial sector, including members of the Arab Coordination Group, the Africa Development Bank, the Asia Development Bank, the Caribbean Development Bank, the Inter-American Bank for Development, CAF, the Inter-American Development Bank, the World Bank, and others. This compact focuses on three key sectors central to long-term resilience: water, education, and health. By combining more affordable development finance with private capital mobilization to have better terms, more concessional on interest rates, and longer on tenure, from 15 to 20-year money to 30 to 40-year money. We commend this new compact to members of this Assembly and of the OAS for those vulnerable climate countries who are on the forefront, the front line of the climate battle. Mr. President, like others, we support the actions in Haiti, not only because it is an urgent problem for us, but because we know that lawlessness and bad behavior descend into criminality, and like any other infectious human disease, can spread. In other words, as we would say in Barbados, it is me today and it is you tomorrow. We have to act expeditiously and concretely to reverse the lawlessness that we have seen in Haiti, because whenever one state is challenged, all the states of the Americas are challenged. Finally, on the OAS, for this organization to remain relevant, it too must evolve. Democracy cannot be reduced just to elections. It must deliver fairness, opportunity, and accountability, including with trust. The Inter-American Development Charter must therefore remain a living instrument, a lived reality for all our peoples. And history will judge this Assembly not by our declarations, not by our resolutions, but by the actions and the impacts which they create. Let Panama 2026 be remembered not just as a normal General Assembly, but as a moment when the Americas choose renewal over inertia and cooperation over fragmentation. As the great Barbadian son, late George Lamin, noted novelist, said, and I quote, "The architecture of the future is not only unfinished, the scaffolding has hardly gone up," unquote. Mr. President, Barbados stands ready to help in every respect. I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Barbado, dear friend Christopher. Ha habido una permuta entre países.
There has been an exchange between countries, and I give the floor now to the delegation of Costa Rica. Mr. President of the General Assembly and distinguished colleagues, I extend greetings to the people and to the government of Panama for their hospitality and for the organization of this 56th ordinary session of the General Assembly of the Organization of American States. We face the scourge of transnational criminal organizations and a weakening of institutions, as well as persistent economic and social gaps affecting our countries. In this regard, Costa Rica reiterates its deep concern for the situation facing Nicaragua. The attack on fundamental liberties, the closure of civic dialogue and spaces, arbitrary detentions, persecution of dissidents and human rights defenders, as well as members of religious communities, including the Catholic Church. All of this continues making this country more distant from the democratic principles that guide our hemisphere. As a neighboring country and in solidarity with the people of Nicaragua, we reiterate our strongest call for respect of human rights, for fundamental liberties, and the rule of law. Costa Rica also, with great concern, sees the evolution of the situation in Cuba, not only for restrictions on fundamental liberties, as well as the economic and social troubles that are affecting the population in Cuba. The decision to cut off diplomatic relations reflects the seriousness with which we see this situation. Also, we are concerned about the scenario in Venezuela, the persecution of political prisoners, and a return for democratic rule in Venezuela. The situation in Haiti also requires us to call for support and solidarity with the people and the government of Haiti in their search for prosperity and stability for that country and its people. Finally, let me extend my firmest support to the people of Bolivia in their effort for ensuring democratic stability in this dear sister country. The hemispheric situations that overrun national capacities, illegal arms trafficking, cyber crimes, human trafficking, money laundering are just some of the actions that require coordinated actions in solidarity among all of us. We call on our membership to consider those problems that affect us in terms of health outcomes, environmental problems, illegal mining. In a territory very close to our border with Nicaragua, the illegal mining of gold with people who are connected to international organized crime have cut down and contaminated hundreds of hectares of rainforest. This is a problem not only for our country of national dimensions, but also international dimensions that require international coordination to avoid that they would proliferate. Member states of the OAS need a more effective organization, more focused on the essential mandates of the OAS and more capable of giving results for our citizenry. For this reason, we denote the role of electoral observer missions that have been present in elections throughout the hemisphere. Costa Rica is ever convinced that multilateralism is the most effective tool for us to discuss and to provide collective solutions and support. It allows us to concentrate our efforts in upholding these spaces, making them more efficient, more inclusive, and effective by means of realistic and pragmatic reforms. For this reason, and well aware that multilateralism faces enormous challenges, Costa Rica has proposed an extraordinary person, Eric Greenspan, as a candidate for the Secretary General position of the United Nations. Her vision and engagement would allow that organization to prevent and resolve disputes. Your Excellencies, 200 years ago, there was a vision of continental unity that was born and continues to guide us today, knowing that our countries are stronger when we act collectively. And peace, democracy, freedom, and human dignity constitute the path towards a safer, more prosperous, and fairer world for all of us. Thank you. Thank you to the Foreign Minister of Costa Rica for his intervention. And we now return to the previously established order, giving the floor to Foreign Minister of Bolivia, Fernando Aramayo Carrasco. Mr. Javier Eduardo Martinez, Foreign Minister of Panama, Secretary General and Assistant Secretary General of the OAS, heads of delegation of member states, and permanent representatives and permanent observers. We look at the inter-American system today and add our voice to those of others in thanking Panama for the celebration of this anniversary, 200 years of the Amphitronic Congress. A particular congratulations, particularly to all of our women diplomat colleagues. I speak to you today on behalf of the plurinational state of Bolivia, knowing full well that the challenges that affect our democracy require more cooperation and a deep reflection on how we resolve our differences in societies that are ever more complex. The Americas have lived a long time under the rule of law. We've learned many times through very painful chapters that a country cannot prosper without effective institutions, and no one can forget the constitutions that rule the life of our peoples. However, we face more intense social tensions, an increasing political polarization, an expansion of disinformation, greater levels of violence, and the progressive erosion of trust in public institutions. All of this puts our democracies to the test to answer legitimate demands that would not erode our institutions. We, in recent weeks in our country, have experienced social conflict that has restricted the free movement of persons, of transport of goods, and affected the daily life of millions of our citizens in Bolivia. This conflict began, as happens always in a democracy, with various demands, and in many cases legitimate demands. But something else happened over the course of a number of days. Rather than the conflict focusing only on those demands, it began to grow to a greater and deeper political confrontation. Over time, as the state sought to give answers, the conflict became more intense. Rather than dialogue, they became an instrument to paralyze the country, to affect the supply of goods and services, and to generate a growing political cost. And in this context, something essential was put to the test: the capacity of a democratic state to manage the crisis without violating the Constitution. And in this context, naturally, and given what has recently happened in Bolivia, what we see is that this clearly reflects the concerns and the crises affecting this assembly, such as the defense of democracy, our institutional capacity and the capacity of our member states to face crises that are deeply interconnected. I remind you that these are ever more dynamic scenarios, and no democracy can sustain itself without cooperation and solidarity, which are indispensable to preserve governance and stability in our region. For this reason, in the framework of this assembly, we bring a reflection on the challenges facing our democracies under prolonged conflict, which affect both sustained institutional stability. Over the more than 50 days of crisis, President Rodrigo Paz has faced an additional challenge, different than those faced before. This is an increasing social polarization, broadened and intensified by the social media. In this context, not only have we faced a situation difficult to accept in terms of recognizing the opinions of others, but to live with it and debilitating the very possibility of having a dialogue. The manipulation of public opinion has only hardened positions and leading to a deepening crisis and polarization. Faced with this, the government sought a more prudent course, addressing the legitimate demands and trying to avoiding a quick escalation of the use of force. This decision was not happenstance. It was the profound reflection in believing that in a democracy, the use of force must always be the last resort and never the first measure. A democracy, as I said, cannot endure if political differences are addressed through coercion or a systematic violation of others. The peaceful protest is a right. Freedom of expression is a right. Participation and the freedom of assembly are rights, but also access to health, access to food, the free circulation of persons, and the guarantee of security. Human rights cannot be selective and must be treated integrally. When we lack medication, when we lack being able to circulate freely, freedom of expression becomes a contest between fundamental rights. And at that point, the state has the obligation of acting. For this reason, our recent experiences calls us to call into question, how do we guarantee in Bolivia peaceful protests and the legitimate expression of differences of opinion with the need to ensure safety for our citizens? This is a practical challenge that affects our whole hemisphere. This is a context that is ever more complex, both regionally as well as globally, where other factors have interfered in the stability. In Latin America, we see how the organized crime has occupied greater spaces and led to deepening conflicts. And this is not hierarchical structures, but very flexible networks that operate in a number of countries, and an episode of instability in any one country doesn't exist in isolation. There's no clear evidence of criminal gangs or networks, criminal organized crime networks. This calls on member states to fight illicit networks and affect powerful interests and therefore encounter resistance. What is at play here is not just the resolution of a momentary crisis, but the sustainability of our democracies and the ability to withstand not always visible challenges. Our recent experience, Mr. President, in Bolivia leads us to call on friendly governments, international organizations, came to Bolivia with logistical support and humanitarian aid to meet our urgent needs. On behalf of the plurinational state of Bolivia, let me express our deepest gratitude, because in this context, cooperation is a need. It is not merely a compliment, and we wish to express our thanks to the Organization of American States for the opportunities to share the situation we are facing today, not only for us as Bolivians, but to all Latin Americans. We also thank the government of Panama and President José Raúl Mulino for his willingness to bring together a group of ministers of defense and foreign ministers who will soon visit our countries. Our recognition also is due to those countries that extended timely humanitarian support: Argentina, Chile, Ecuador, Peru, United States, and other neighbor countries who responded to guarantee access to essential and basic products. Bolivia wishes to point out the support of the Republic of Chile at this difficult time. This was an expression of solidarity between neighboring states. beyond any historical differences that we may have. From this position, we wish to build opportunities for cooperation for the benefit of our countries. Bolivia reaffirms that mutual respect, cooperation, and dialogue must always prevail in our international relations. The experience of the past may not be a barrier limiting our possibilities. On the other hand, there is a moral imperative for us to build a future together for our peoples, because it is these gestures precisely that allow us to move forward step by step to more constructive, mature relationships for the benefit of all of our region. We also thank the support of member states of the OAS in defense of democracy and the constitutional order. All of this confirms our very conviction that multilateralism shows its strength when it is translated into effective impact and concrete actions that will affect people, strengthen institutions, and contribute to preserve the viability of defense of human rights. The challenges facing our democracies are not limited to any one of our countries. They are shared by all of us, and we congratulate learning of the mission of foreign ministers that will come in support. We also thank the opportunity to be here as a voice of Bolivians in these forums. These forums exist to answer to our peoples. We must make people the center of our actions, and we must remember that the reason for being of our institutions is to ensure the dignity and liberties of all of our citizens. The experience of Bolivia shows us that it is possible to face crises such as we have faced with respect for sovereignty. Democracies must be strengthened even in moments of extreme tension without giving up on dialogue that will preserve constitutional order. I remember a lesson particularly relevant for our region today, where a state is weakened, where institutions must show their capacity for response and democracy is eroded. There is the opportunity for those who would wish to take over our economies, our societies, to put them in the service of illicit and unlawful pursuits. For that reason, the rule of law and the capacity of states to exercise fully their own responsibilities is a fundamental need for us to work collectively and together. Democracies will not be strengthened when our differences disappear, but when we find in our differences the institutional capacity to respond, when we protect our rights wholesale, when dialogue prevails over force, and when our institutions have the capacity to respond, to continue betting in a renewed way on dialogue and cooperation and democracy, a democracy that includes participation, is representative, and respects the rule of law. The challenges of the present day do not require less democracy, but rather greater democracy, democracies that are capable of protecting human rights, liberty, institutional stability, and social peace. This is the challenge today for Bolivia and the challenge for all of the Americas. The recent experience of Bolivia reminds us that democracy requires patience, trust, that conflicts can be resolved and may be resolved within our institutional framework. This is the principle that has guided the actions of President Paz throughout this crisis and that we wish to share here. To paraphrase President Paz, everything in democracy, nothing outside of democracy. This was the statement he made at the most critical juncture to preserve the constitutional order, protect the rights of the population, and to maintain open the possibility of dialogue. We believe that this is the correct path for Bolivia and for all of us. Thank you.
Gracias, Fernando.
Thank you, Fernando. May the Bolivian democracy continue. I pass the floor to Mexico. Deputy Secretary Raquel. Welcome, Raquel. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Mr. Chair, ministers all, esteemed representatives, it is an honor to participate in this 56th regular assembly of the OAS, representing Chancellor Roberto Vasco. And I would like to also send greetings from Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo. I would like to thank the authorities of the Republic of Panama and congratulate them for how they have hosted us so well over these last few days. Also to the General Secretariat of the OAS for making this important meeting possible. We are celebrating this General Assembly in the framework of the 200th anniversary of the Congress of Panama of 1826, which really established the foundation for multilateralism that continues here today and the foundation for regional cooperation thanks to the vision of the liberator Simón Bolívar. Now, we respond to this multilateral call to facilitate constructive solutions as we face regional challenges. Esteemed colleagues, our host, Panama, chose well when they chose the slogan, firm multilateralism in defense of democracy, hemispheric security, and stability in the American states. For Mexico, multilateralism is only firm when it is also just. If it translates into less inequality and more rights for our people. But also if it respects the self-determination of peoples and a central principle, which is respect to others' rights and the non-intervention. That is a conviction which guides my country's intervention in this assembly. The OAS is a repository for inter-American juridical wisdom. For almost 80 years, we have worked together to create rules based on which our countries have been able to coexist peacefully. The members of this organization share values and principles that have been written down in foundational documents and have been reaffirmed in many declarations that are now part of the living text of our collective beliefs. History has showed that solutions imposed from outside are never sustainable. I want to remember that the self-determination of our peoples is a principle that is consecrated in the charter of the OAS itself. It establishes that the peoples have a right to choose their own form of government and to build the path towards well-being for their population. Mexico has been clear on this and will continue to be clear that respecting sovereignty is not an ideological posture. It is the foundation of international law and any legitimate multilateral order. Coercive unilateral measures, threats of the use of force, and expressions that seek to crush the people do not create peace, rather they undermine it. It cannot be justified to violate the territorial authority of a country. And so we call all of these members of this organization to remember our foundational agreements, that cooperation between equals and not imposition is the only and the best path to move towards lasting solutions. For Mexico, economic development must go hand in hand with substantial improvements in the well-being of our populations, reducing inequality and allowing them to effectively enjoy their rights. To that end, in Mexico, we work with a very clear objective, guided by the principles of Mexican humanism. For the good of all, for the poor first. Social justice is not an abstract concept for us. It is a concrete measure for success for all of our public policies. Esteemed colleagues, true development is only possible when all people can live a dignified life, free from violence or any form of discrimination. Protecting human rights is a non-negotiable foundation for our actions, and it is a priority in the international agenda for Mexico. The OAS, through the Inter-American System for Human Rights, has been key in promoting and protecting the rights of the people of the Americas. For that reason, it is fundamental that the organs of this system, the court and the commission, continue to act with a progressive vision of human rights. Both are enormous achievements in our exercise of multilateralism at the OAS. And the states have the duty to preserve these organizations and avoid their weakening or regression of the high standards that they have achieved through their history. Mexico reiterates that we support those commissioned by the CIDH, its executive secretary, and all staff, as well as the magistrates, judges, and staff in the court. And we seek to maintain the technical expertise of the staff, as well as we respect all of those who work so hard in the area of human rights. Friends, the stability of our region cannot occur without appropriate management of human mobility. Mexico continues to be a receiving country, respectful of the rights of migrants to Mexico, and also advocates, tireless advocates for the rights of our migrants in other countries. We ask for collaboration from all states in the hemisphere to combat organized crime effectively, with cooperation and with full respect for our territorial integrity and international law. We affirm that respectful cooperation is the best way to have true results in the fight against organized crime. And in this sense, we value the recent consultative opinion from the recent advisory opinion from the IACRH on human rights about illicit trafficking of weapons. There are many agendas that we have here, but there is one important issue that we cannot put off, and it is women. As a representative of the government led by the first woman president in my country, we know that we have a conviction to move forward in substantial equality, and that is the only way to achieve more just, more peaceful, and more well-being in our societies. Therefore, we must include in our agenda the removal of any violence against women and allowing full participation in decision-making spaces for women. There are key agendas that must be included as cross-cutting, intersectional issues in all of the work and all of the agreements that our organization establishes. Before I close out, I would like to recognize the work of the General Secretary, the Assistant General Secretary, and the team at the Secretariat. And I would like to call you to responsible and transparent use of the resources of this organization. The OAS continues to be a fundamental multilateral forum for the hemisphere to promote democracy, peace, progressive growth in international law, human rights, and sustainable development. 200 years after the first Amphitronic Congress of Panama, it is not just that we need to join together, but that we can join together as peers, as countries that recognize each other as sovereign and do not seek to impose upon each other, but rather understand that genuine cooperation demands respect, not as a concession. That is the kind of multilateralism that Mexico desires, not with asymmetry and imposition, but with constructive dialogue. We call this assembly to be faithful to that spirit. We must find in the diversity of our views not an obstacle, but material to create successful projects that can be carried out in our diverse continent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Minister Raquel. We'll pass the floor to the Dominican Republic, His Excellency Roberto Alvarez, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much, Minister Javier Martinez Acha, Chair of this 56th General Assembly of the Organization of American Sets, General Secretary Albert Ramdin, Assistant Secretary General Laura Hill, and colleagues all. The recent words of the representative from Mexico remind me that today is the International Day of Women in Diplomacy, which is recognized by the General Secretariat of the United Nations. And so we want to take advantage of this moment to congratulate all of you women, and also to say that the Dominican Republic believes that at this time we should really, this is the moment to elect a woman for the General Secretariat role at the United Nations. We are living through a moment that requires that we look to the future. The day before last, we had our opening ceremony for the 56th General Assembly here in Panama, and we reflected on that Congress held 200 years ago. And now we must offer concrete responses to the challenges that we are facing in our time. The Americas now have more democracy than any other time in our history. We are the developing region with the most number of democratically elected governments. However, regional integration has never been so difficult. We govern ourselves, we elect, but we must develop a greater capacity to act together to face challenges that no country can face on its own. The Dominican Republic reaffirms its commitment to the pillars of this organization: democracy, human rights, multidimensional security, and integral development. The commemoration of the anniversary of the Inter-American Charter also reminds us of the relevance of democracy, which requires solid institutions, the respect of human rights, separation of powers, transparency, and accountability. The best way to honor this historic instrument, the Charter, is not just through commemoration, but by keeping its spirit alive and strengthening our democracies. Dialogue continues to be our most valuable tool. This organization was born for that reason, to transform vision into common purpose. But this dialogue is only meaningful when it becomes action. If we really want to be integrated, we must name what continues to separate us. We continue to be one of the most unequal regions on the planet, and inequality is not just a social wound, it is also a political break. It is something that erodes citizen trust and destroys our bases of legitimacy. We cannot have true integration if our societies themselves are fragmented. Another challenge is transnational organized crime, which has been mentioned here many times. Drug trafficking and illegal weapons trafficking are no longer simple security problems. In many places, they are a direct threat to the authority of the state, democratic life, and development. In the Dominican Republic, they are a high priority. We need more modern, agile, and effective regional cooperation. We must track illegal weapons, strengthen our capacities for intelligence, and choke out the organized crime networks that are threatening our people. Organized crime is becoming more and more integrated. There's another challenge, which is the energy challenge. Our continent possesses more energy than any other continent. Sun, water, wind. We're taking advantage of a very small percentage of the potential for clean energy. We continue to use imported fuels that make our economy more expensive and eliminate our competitive advantage. Clean, connected energy is not just an environmental aspiration, it is a security aspiration. It offers competitiveness and sovereignty to our countries, and it can be one of the key pillars for hemispheric integration. Together with that, emerges a question that will define our future: the technological revolution and artificial intelligence. It is not enough to consume technology. We must participate in building capacities, principles, and regulatory frameworks that allow us to utilize technology for its benefits and minimize its risks. Artificial intelligence could potentially broaden the gaps that we seek to close, and the OAS should promote technological governments that combines innovation, inclusion, and protection of fundamental rights. Mr. Chair, none of this will be possible without an organization that is able to meet its responsibilities effectively. For that reason, we encourage transparent and austere administration focused on results that gives us the financial administration necessary to meet our mandates. Nothing can justify the weakening of democracy or the restriction of human rights in any corner of the Americas. We cannot be indifferent to the persecution of dissident voices, the existence of political prisoners, other practices that ignore the inherent dignity of human beings. The defense of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law will continue to be an essential role of this organization. Colleagues, for island countries and coastal countries, the climate emergency is also not a future hypothesis. It is a current reality. Our actions, collective actions that we use to face organized crime, to close the technological gap, is the same one that the United Nations encourages us to use as we face crises like the Sargassum crisis. The United Nations has mentioned this threat and says that when we act together with perseverance, our voices can influence the global agenda. Mr. Chair, there is no political stability without safe streets. There is no sustainable development without facing the climate crisis. There is no competitiveness without accessible energy, and there is no lasting progress if we allow technology to only deepen inequality. Organized crime, energy, and technology are different challenges, but they share one demand: deeper and more effective cooperation between our nations. 2 centuries ago, here in Panama, there was a vision for a more united America, and we have to show that we are able to turn that aspiration into concrete results for our people. It cannot be just about meetings. We must utilize our capacities to improve the lives of our citizens. That is the challenge for our generation, and that is our responsibility. Thank you. Thank you, Chancellor, dear friend Roberto. I'll pass the floor to Chile, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Francisco Perez Mackenna. Welcome, friend. Thank you, Minister, Chair of the General Assembly, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Javier Martinez, Mr. Albert Ramdin, Secretary General, Ms. Laura Hill, Assistant Secretary General, to all the heads of delegation and all present. I want to also congratulate Panama for the organization of this General Assembly. Today, I bring a message from President which reaffirms our commitment to integration and regional cooperation. We must work to face the main challenges in our region, facing transnational organized crime, irregular migration, and the development of our economies. Chile agrees serenely that hemispheric cooperation is logical when it creates results that affect people's lives. Our region expects that we provide concrete actions. And Chile has defined 3 clear priorities for our international actions: security, economic growth, and building trust. We are confident that there is no development without that we cannot have lasting cooperation without trust. Today, organized crime crosses borders and moves to our countries in an accelerated way. We must face the different aspects of this problem. And to face these challenges, we must coordinate joint action. We must encourage cooperation, police and legal cooperation, and promote the exchange of intelligence to stop drug trafficking, money laundering, and illegal weapons trafficking. I have conversed with the Mercosur countries where we came to an agreement in Santiago with the Santiago Convention, and our sister Republic of Paraguay also joined, and we have agreed that in 180 days, we will present an initiative with clear, concrete actions, which will allow us to bring in other regional partners. Crime knows no border, and that is why we must call on others to join this initiative. But we still face challenges in our institutions. Corruption removes resources that should be focused on social support, and crime prevents us from focusing on the needs of our citizens. We must reclaim our borders, and that is what we are working towards now. This challenge requires regional coordination to stop this threat and to take control of our borders safely. Currently, we need to respond to our citizens, which are concerned about the new realities that we face. Economic development is key. We need to ensure that markets are operating without restrictions that limit their growth. Freedom to start business is what allows our economies to grow and generate work. We have a responsibility. Many citizens have taken on that responsibility. We have a call to democracy, especially our sister country, Bolivia. We have not waited to act and support the government of President Paz. Defending democracy and its values is not the same as protests that generate violence, confusion, and danger. We must be brave to fight against any coordinated action to destabilize democratic government, like what is happening in Bolivia. We have been looking at certain processes that will help people to develop peace and security. We are worried that still in the Americas, there are countries that violate basic human rights. And so we call to recover in our society the values reflected in the Democratic Inter-American Charter, which is going to have its 25th anniversary this year. We want to work together to have dialogue and cooperate on fundamental liberties to build a more prosperous and safe region. Our societies require an OAS that is more committed to its urgent needs, and we want to work for an organization that is more efficient and focused on responding to those needs. We must reform the OAS so that it is able to work for all and respond to these new threats. Mr. Chair, colleagues, I want to take advantage of this opportunity to reaffirm the candidature of Chile as the location for the BB&J location. We have been contributing for a long time to maritime law. for Latin America and the Caribbean. This is a key issue. And as the only OAS country with a candidacy, I would like to encourage us as a region to take advantage of this opportunity. I finally want to recognize Panama for how they have received us here for this 56th General Assembly. I would also like to thank the team of the General Secretariat for all of the hard work that they have done. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you to my friend Francisco. We now give the floor to Colombia. Her Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Colombia, Rosa Villavicencio Mapi. Mr. Javier Martinez Vasquez, Minister of Foreign Relations of Panama, Mr. Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Albert Ramdin, and Madam Assistant Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Laura Gil. Dear delegates, it is an honor to participate in this General Assembly, as this is the last time that our government will address you, expressing our firm conviction in support of multilateralism and in the potential of this organization to promote the shared values that we have as peoples of the Americas. We thank the government of Panama for the hospitality shown to all of us and for organizing this General Assembly on the bicentennial of the 1826 Amphitronic Congress of Panama. Democracy is strongest when it reflects the diversity of the country that it represents, and for that reason, on this day, when we celebrate women diplomats, we also reassert the foreign policy of Colombia in support of women in diplomacy. Stability in our continent are fundamental values in our hemispheric agenda and ever more relevant today in a context where we face threats to the popular will of the people and well-being of citizens, particularly in the global south. It is, moreover, necessary to underscore that we face crises in our region for two kinds of dangers. The first of these is that of instability as a result of unilateralism exercised by countries who have exercised an excessive political and military powers, and the clear interference of these in the democratic processes of some sovereign countries who are in this hemisphere. This does not reflect any ideology specifically. Then the Colombian government has the firm conviction that when unilateral, when power is imposed unilaterally, this threatens the foundations of democratic republics that began to be formed 2 centuries ago. For this reason, it is ever more urgent to cite from the letter from Jamaica in 1815. Bolivar asserts in that letter that countries face the lights of emancipation and democracies cannot turn back, despite the fact that the threat of submitting the peoples of the Americas to colonial powers. We have already seen the light, and we're being tempted to return to darkness. This was an eloquent phrase that Bolivar spoke, and that reminds us that the rights that have been conquered by people are irreversible and generate a reactionary force wishing to return to colonial domination. It is no secret how these forces have began with indiscriminate challenges to multilateralism and also to the free political exercise of rights of people. We can affirm wholeheartedly that in a world in which unilateralism prevails and interference of foreign powers are exercised in our countries, democracy is threatened, and the principles of peaceful coexistence which were achieved by the decolonization processes. We live in a world in which these dark clouds have not entirely disappeared. I'm specifically referring to how political interference when leaders of other countries declare that they have intervened in the president that won the elections in Colombia. Dear delegates, with this I want to state the importance of the OAS as a political forum in our hemisphere to protect sovereignty and democracy of our peoples. These two principles deserve our current support given the existential threats that divide our countries, faced with the concentration of great wealth and the lack of boundaries between economic and political power. For this reason, Colombia invites this organization to focus on its financial sustainability and improve its capacity to adapt and be more effective in facing current challenges. We also thank the permanent support from the OAS for construction of peace and democratic rule in Colombia in supporting the peace process. Your Excellency, I cannot but point out that these principles of multilateralism are also implicated in finding an immediate solution to the crises that are affecting the sovereignty and the human rights of peoples in our hemisphere. For this reason, from Colombia, we consider that we must address the multidimensional crisis as a priority in our hemisphere. And in this regard, we support the roadmap for stability and peace in Haiti, initiated by the OAS. Once again, I thank you for your attention at this General Assembly of the OAS and reiterate that from Colombia, we will vote in support of multilateralism and the self-determination of peoples. We also are mindful of the threats to these principles that affect international relations so greatly, such as the political engagement of citizens that belong in our hemisphere. Thank you. Thank you, Colombia. We now give the floor to Belize, Mr. Oscar Arnold.
Minister of Panama, Secretary General His Excellency Albert Ramdin, Foreign Ministers, Heads of Delegations, Excellencies, officials of the OAS Secretariat, Government Representative, and friends. I extend Belize's warmest congratulations to our sister Central American state, Panama, on the commemoration of the bicentennial of the historic Amphicyonic Congress of Panama. We thank the government and people of Panama for their generous hospitality during this General Assembly and the events organized for these celebrations. It's always a wonderful time to be in Panama. Mr. Chairman, to say that we gathered during a tumultuous moment in the global theater would certainly be an understatement. We see it in the news, we hear it around us, we feel it in the worried voices of our people. I cannot help but wonder, how would Simón Bolívar react if he was sitting among us today? Would he observe that despite 2 centuries of progress, many of the fundamental challenges confronting our nations remain remarkably familiar? I will not recount the many political, social, and security challenges currently confronting our international community. They are evident to us all and have already been referenced by previous speakers. Instead, I wish to focus on the theme selected by our distinguished host, and specifically on the enduring value of multilateralism. The theme, strong multilateralism in the defense of democracy, hemispheric security, and stability in member states, captures concisely the great shared preoccupation that our democracies, hemispheric security, and even the stability in some states may be at risk. It also rightly identifies strong multilateralism as a bulwark against these threats. For small states, a robust, transparent, and rules-based international and multilateral system is an essential element for security, stability, and at times, the very existence of our states. In a world where disparities in size, economic weight, and geopolitical influence remain a reality, Multilateral institutions provide all states, especially smaller states, with something invaluable: a voice, a seat at the table, and a framework through which international relations are governed by agreed rules rather than raw power. They help ensure that sovereignty is respected, that disputes are settled peacefully, and that the interests of all states, regardless of size, can be advanced through cooperation rather than confrontation. In the inter-American space, this role has been entrusted to the OAS for almost 80 years. While no multilateral institution is without its imperfections, the OAS has repeatedly demonstrated its value when member states allow it to function in accordance with the Charter, its mandates, and shared principles. The organization is a trusted platform for political dialogue, collective action, and peaceful dispute resolution, while serving as the guardian of shared norms and commitments that bind our hemisphere together. As a regional cornerstone of multilateralism, the OAS must serve the needs of member states on the basis of charter and international law, notwithstanding the swinging pendulum of ideological euphoria. Today, member states require the OAS to navigate the complex geopolitical minefield in this hemisphere. It is therefore important that we focus on the assets and tools we have on hand, despite the horizon of threat that keep our leaders awake at night. Now more than ever, we must prioritize collaboration over insignificant differences and strengthen our bastion of multilateralism, the OAS, in its capacity to respond to our needs with agility and efficacy. Belize is grateful for the work and the role of the OAS as a credible partner, accompanying both Belize and Guatemala on the journey to a peaceful and definitive settlement of Guatemala's claim to Belizean territory via the International Court of Justice, the quintessential example of rules-based multilateralism, which is expected to deliver its judgment in the coming year. Furthermore, the OAS offers a platform for institutional challenge to enable several permanent observers to support Belize and Guatemala with resources for the operation of the OAS office in the adjacency zone. Belize, like many of us here, grapple with the evolving threats of transnational criminal organization, including drug cartels in very close proximity of our borders. In response, we turn to the vaunted OAS to provide critical specialized training to our law enforcement agencies in areas ranging from combating money laundering to the tracking and marking of small firearms and munitions. The importance of strong multilateralism remains unquestioned, but recognition alone of this value is no longer sufficient. If we are to strengthen multilateralism for the future, we must focus on prevention, resilience, and opportunity. This requires a fresh examination of other critical pillars of the organization's work, particularly the pillar of development. Democracy, security, and stability cannot be sustained without economic opportunity and sustainable growth. Citizens must feel tangible improvements in their lives if the democratic institutions are to maintain public confidence and legitimacy. For this reason, a renewed development agenda should prioritize initiatives that create enabling environments for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises to generate dignified and decent employment, promote innovation, address the adverse impact of climate change, encourage fair competition, and expand hemispheric trade. Such efforts must move beyond policy decisions toward practical, measurable interventions that deliver concrete results for our people. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, the multidimensional and evolving challenges we face today in the multilateral space are daunting. But as we engage in a rethinking exercise, we should pause and identify the opportunities in the existing challenges. While it may be true that despite the passage of almost 8 decades, the essential purpose of the OAS still remain relevant, it is also true that the tools available to advance our mission, especially the rapid emergence of technologies such as artificial intelligence, open an entire galaxy of opportunities if responsibly adopted. Rethinking the functions of the OAS, particularly its development pillar, is crucial in today's technological landscape. The economies of the future will be predominantly driven by emerging technologies, making it imperative to adapt the OAS's function to align with these advancements and be a leader in the hemispheric adoption of technology. An OAS that delivers better, more effective, and more directly to our people must be anchored in the realities and opportunities of today. We need to answer the question, where is the opportunity to fortify multilateralism and strengthen the OAS in the crises that we face? That answer will only be found if we seek it together. The liberator Simón Bolívar famously said, "In the unity of our nations rests the glorious future of our peoples." And that phrase has greater relevance today than ever before. Today, I call on all our member states to recommit to our multilateral institutions, to recognize the value they represent as essential conduits for cooperation to confront together the challenges that face all our nations. None of our nations can face these daunting obstacles alone. Only together can we achieve our strategic goals and make the difference for the future of our peoples. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you to Belize. We now give the floor to Dominica. Ambassador Steve Farrell.
Mr. President, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, Ministers of Foreign Affairs, heads of delegation, permanent representatives and delegates, permanent observers, staff of the OAS, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings. Mr. President, it is fair to assess that every delegation here today can attest to varying degrees that our challenges, like those of past generations, are always too complex and unlimited to fully list, comprehend, or resolve. The founding fathers of the OAS exercised their wisdom to identify specific areas of common hemispheric interest and establish the OAS framework as this dynamic political platform where the leaders who follow can chart in this context an overall development path for the hemisphere. We are fortunate today that we aren't the proverbial preacher or the choir, but partners joining here in Panama with the invitation by our host to refocus on firm multilateralism in defense of democracy, hemispheric security, and the American states. United under the OAS Charter as juridical equals, working to continue this legacy of progress in our hemisphere. Mr. President, before I proceed to highlight a few points, more as reminders to partners than new facts, I want to thank you, the government and people of the Republic of Panama, for these exceptional arrangements and the warm and hospitality shown to us upon our arrival here and continuing during this assembly. The Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica, Dr. Honorable Roosevelt Scarrett, and Minister with responsibility for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Vince Henderson, send warm greetings and the best wishes for a successful assembly. Mr. President, we note and support the sincere intentions of our theme. However, for Dominica, like our sister island states of the Caribbean, including Haiti, once you float words like multilateralism, democracy, and security, they echo in our hearts and our people in reality, especially as we are now in the hurricane season. They speak to our lived experiences, and what we actually hear is hurricanes, floods, earthquake, and increased death. We know of crime and conflict, but security to us also resonate climate and economic resilience, food security, better housing, and safer communities. Dominica submits that true multilateralism must transcend dialogue. It must, for example, cover in practice a provision of fair access to finance and technology, given our small populations, limited fiscal space, and high vulnerability, despite being classified as a middle-income country. Mr. President, in our own small state experience, democracy itself is not a standalone concept. It is strengthened at its core through resilience. To us, this is a lived stability, as climate shocks with its recovery burdens has the potential to substantially destabilize governance. Additionally, hemispheric security must itself include climate security. It will remain incomplete if small states, if it does not see climate change as a threat multiplier. Security, in its contemporary definition, must therefore address priorities like disaster preparedness and response coordination, climate risk insurance, and supply chain stability. As the Honorable Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica has said to the world, that Dominica, like many Caribbean states, stands at the front line of climate change. This statement, I must submit, Mr. President, must now be modified to include that we are also standing at the front line of hemispheric security. Mr. President, Dominica begs the question, what kind of OAS do we want? Here's our constructive and forward-looking proposition. Within an OAS that amplifies and champions the voices of small states, that is responsive to our vulnerabilities, that supports resilience building as democratic strengthening, that mobilizes finance and partnership and advance the blue and green economy. Mr. President, we again present Dominica as a model driven by our own experiences, positioning ourselves as a partner ready to collaborate, innovate, and share lessons across the hemisphere. We remain committed to providing leadership and credibility in our climate resilience agenda, our move towards geothermal energy independence, our investment in climate resilient housing, agriculture transformation, food security, and the building of community resilience. Mr. President, before I conclude, please allow me this opportunity to place on record our profound appreciation for the sterling work done by Mrs. Kim Osborne, a national of Dominica, for her outstanding performance during her tenure as Executive Director of CIDI. We recognize her tireless efforts to ensure that all member states, particularly those more vulnerable, benefited from the programs of CIDI and the OAS. Her efforts will forever be remembered. Mr. President, firm multilateralism must be measured not only by commitments, but by its ability to deliver resilience, protect vulnerable populations, and ensure that no state, no matter how small, is left behind. This is a multilateralism we must build together. In conclusion, Dominica tables these three realities as reminders. Multilateralism must address climate vulnerabilities and economic constraints. Democracy and security depends on resilience, and the OAS must become more inclusive, responsive, and action-oriented for small island states. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. We give the floor now to Ecuador. Foreign Minister Roberto Curi. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Actually, Foreign Minister Curi was required to leave yesterday and has left the Vice Foreign Minister, but I share with you the greetings from our Foreign Minister, Mr. Curi, to you and to other Foreign Ministers, heads of delegations and Foreign Ministers, Madam Secretary, Assistant Secretary General, and Mr. Secretary General. Allow me to express on behalf of Daniel Novoa's the President of Ecuador and the people of Ecuador. Our thanks to the government and people of Panama for this hosting and organization of the 56th General Assembly of the Organization of American States. We meet on a day of profound significance for the people of the Americas. 200 years ago, in this same land, the Amphitronic Congress of Panama gave shape to an ideal that is still alive today, the conviction that common responses are required for the common challenges we face, and cooperation between our states will be necessary to preserve democracy, peace, and stability, as well as prosperity. The theme of this assembly, the Americas United, in the bicentennial of the Amphitronic Congress, and firm multilateralism in defense of democracy, hemispheric security, and stability in our member states, reflect very clearly the priorities of our day. For Ecuador, multilateralism is meaningful when it generates concrete results for our citizens. We believe, therefore, in a strong and relevant OAS oriented towards results, an organization that continues strengthening the 4 pillars and that is capable of responding to the challenges facing our hemisphere today. Democracy is the basis of political stability, sustainable development, and the protection of human rights in our societies. For this reason, Ecuador reasserts its commitment to the principles enshrined in the Charter of the OAS and the Inter-American Democratic Charter. This last instrument, commemorating its 25th year of existence this year, continues to be essential for the preservation of the democratic order in our hemisphere. Nonetheless, democracies face ever more complex challenges. The scourge of transnational organized crime, which has become one of the main risks for democracy, for development of the Americas, and for development of the Americas. This is not only a problem for public safety, it is an enemy that corrupts economies, leads to greater corruption, and erodes trust of citizens in democracy. Ecuador knows this reality and lives this reality. The government of President Daniel Noboa has faced with great determination, faced up to the criminal organizations linked to drug trafficking, illegal arms trafficking, money laundering, human trafficking, illegal mining, and other unlawful economic activities that operate transnationally and that seek to challenge the legitimate authority of the state. For this reason, Ecuador upholds a clear conviction. No democracy, no solid democracy is possible if organized crime seeks to substitute itself as the legitimate authority of the state. When violence destroys opportunities, and there may not be any lasting security without the effective control of the territory and international cooperation. No country may, on its own, face up to criminal organizations that operate beyond its borders, that have enormous financial resources and technology available to them, and work with a speed and adaptability unprecedented in our time. The response of states must be in solidarity and up to the task and the challenge. We need to strengthen the mechanisms in our hemisphere for cooperation, to deepen an exchange of information and intelligence, to reinforce cooperation between our courts and our police, and to confront the new modalities of international organized crime, as well as the recruitment of these organizations. Security in our hemisphere must not be a regional public good, but a shared responsibility of all of our member states. This is the contribution that Ecuador wishes to make a priority and to promote in the Organization of American States. At the same time, we recognize that security must be complemented by policies that lead to greater opportunities for all. Economic growth, investment, education, innovation, and cooperation internationally are essential and indispensable tools to strengthen the resilience of our societies and to prevent the conditions that favor the expansion of criminal activity. Ecuador will continue to promote an international insertion open to free trade, investments, and cooperation. Precisely on this point, Ecuador wishes to join its vote on the commemoration of the 30th anniversary of CD, one of the broadest networks in our hemisphere for cooperation in favor of integral development. Through this network, our member states have strengthened our institutional capacities, exchanged experiences, and developed new and innovative projects in tourism, work, education, social development, innovation, science, and technology. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, heads of delegation, 2 centuries ago, the leaders of our region understood that the common challenges required common responses, and that working together was a strategic necessary and not simply a rhetorical aspiration. This continues to be the legacy, the principal legacy of the Amphitronic Congress of Panama. It is our task today to renew this commitment by means of an effective multilateralism, a firm defense of democracy, and collective and decisive action that would face up to the threats in our societies. Ecuador will continue to working with all countries of the Americas to strengthen cooperation, to preserve security, consolidating our democratic institutions, promoting development, and building a region that is safer, more prosperous, more inclusive for current and future generations. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Vicecanciller.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister. There has been a change. We will be hearing from His Excellency Carlos Ramiro Martinez from Guatemala. Thank you very much to His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Panama, Javier Acha, the General Secretary, Albert Ramdin, Assistant General Secretary, Laura Hill, Excellencies, Ministers, Heads of Delegation, ladies and gentlemen. Guatemala greets you and our President Arevalo sends his greetings. We would like to thank Panama for their hospitality on this 56th regular session of the General Assembly of the OAS. This General Assembly has historic significance. America united on the bicentennial of the Amphitronic Congress of Panama calls us to remember that 200 years ago on Panamanian soil, a vision was presented for cooperation and unification in our region. And it continues to be valid, as here in the Americas, we face challenges that no state can deal with on their own. We must strengthen institutions. We look at hemispheric security, human mobility, and inequality gaps. These are things that require cooperation, and Guatemala reaffirms its stance that cooperation is a strategic need. The OAS continues to be the primary political forum for the hemisphere, and it is indispensable for creating dialogue, consensus, and working with member states to find shared solutions. And in this context, the commemoration of the 25th anniversary of the Inter-American Democratic Charter is relevant as well. It reminds us that the peoples of the Americas have a right to democracy and that their governments have an obligation to defend democracy. Democracy requires solid institutions, transparency, separation of powers, citizen trust, accountability, and full respect for human rights. Guatemala can testify to the practical relevance of the Inter-American Democratic Charter. The OAS support to member states and the support from the international community has allowed for a peaceful institutional transition in Guatemala, and our experience confirms that preventative work and open dialogue can protect democracy when we carry it out responsibly and with respect. Democracy is threatened when insecurity and organized crime interact with the daily lives of our citizens. Hemispheric security must be dealt with a holistic view, with cooperation at all levels. We must combat illegal weapons flows, drug flows, human trafficking. We must deal with the causes of human poverty. We would also like at Guatemala to express our solidarity with the Haitian people. This is a response that demands a coordinated, sustained response that is respectful of the Haitian leadership. The actions in Haiti should be led by Haitians with the support of CARICOM, the OAS, the United Nations, and other international partners. Our region also faces structural challenges linked to integral development. For the countries in Central America and the Caribbean, food security and disaster risk management, adapting to climate change, and the resilience of our communities are key priorities that cannot be put off. We are vulnerable to extreme natural phenomena, despite having contributed little to the real cause of climate change. And so it must be a key part of our inter-American agreement as we promote peace, trust, and goodwill. As far as the situation between Guatemala and Belize, we very much value the participation of the OAS and the Friends of Guatemala and Belize group. We have been able to prevent incidents, build trust, and develop projects to benefit the communities in the area as both countries move forward peacefully, legally, and definitively before the Inter-American Court of Justice. Timely paying of quotas, managing resources, prioritizing mandates, and seeking consensus are essential elements for preserving the capacity of our organization to continue working. Guatemala is here at this assembly with a constructive spirit, seeking dialogue, and with a conviction that the inter-American system continues to be necessary. But we also come in with one certainty. Our societies expect results. They expect regional institutions that listen, that accompany us, and that contribute to resolving concrete problems. At the 200th anniversary of the Amphictyonic Congress in Panama, we have a vision that doesn't belong to the past, a vision that is projected to the future, to create a more effective OAS that is more aligned with the needs of our people. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carlos. We will now pass the floor to Honduras, which has had a change with the United States. Go right ahead. Madam Pamela Handel Rivera. Excellency Javier Martinez Acha, Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Republic of Panama. Excellency Albert Randin, General Secretary of the Organization of American States. Excellencies, heads of delegation, distinguished delegations. It is an honor for me to speak to this assembly on the International Day of Women in Diplomacy, and a special greeting to all of my female colleagues here today. We are here together in Panama at a moment of deep historic significance. The bicentennial of the Amphictyonic Congress of 1826, 200 years later. The Americas once again find themselves facing an essential question. Will we be able to translate historic memory into effective action and shared principles, concrete results for our people? For Honduras, this commemoration cannot be just a convocatory action. It must be a demand. As we look at the Panamanian Congress, we remember that unity is not about rhetoric. It is about open dialogue, shared security, respect between sovereign states. Throughout this assembly, we have heard broad diagnostics about the challenges that our hemisphere faces. Geopolitical fragmentation, transnational crime, irregular migration, economic pressures, climate change, and accelerated technological transformation. The task now is not to repeat the same diagnosis, but rather to turn it into action. Our people desire verifiable results, practical solutions that affect their real lives. And in Honduras, the 27th of January, we started a new democratic time under new leadership with a clear priority, which is to put people at the center of public actions and to rebuild trust through results. Our roadmap starts with a very simple sequence. Generate stability, stability generates investment, investment creates employment, and employment broadens well-being. Our objectives require rule of law, legal security, functioning infrastructure, more coverage in health and education, the reactivation of certain activities, and public administration that is focused on resolving problems. We find in the inter-American space a natural place to project our commitment. For Honduras, democracy is not just a method for electing authorities. It is an essential condition for stability, for peaceful coexistence, for validating human rights, for building development with social legitimacy. Your Excellencies, Honduras appears before this assembly as a country that went through in 2025 an intense, significant electoral process. We valued the support of the electoral mission from the OAS, which contributed to strengthening transparency and trust in our process. At the same time, we take on seriously your recommendations, convinced that all democracies should continue constantly improving their electoral institutionality, technical capacities, and certainty or capacity to offer trust to citizens. With that same conviction, we follow the democratic process of our region. We would like to highlight the efforts taken to create institutional stability, and we believe that every election should be an opportunity to increase citizen participation, rule of law, and respect for the popular will. In that spirit, we believe it is indispensable that the hemisphere continue focusing on those situations that affect democratic stability and human dignity in our region. We reiterate the importance of making progress in Venezuela towards a genuine, peaceful, democratic transition with institutions and trustworthy elections. We also express our solidarity with Haiti as they face this deep crisis, and we back the hemispheric focus on stabilizing and recovering in that country. We also, as we respond to the tensions in Bolivia, mention our backing for the legitimately elected government, and we highlight that political differences should be resolved through dialogue, respect for rule of law, and democratic mechanisms, not through coercion or destabilization. Ladies and gentlemen, for countries like Honduras, the response to international insecurity cannot be isolation or fragmentation. It must be a renewed bet on useful multilateralism, respect for international law, practical cooperation, and a hemispheric view focused on results. We must move from managing crises to building development, so that we can have a more effective hemisphere that strengthens our economies and translates in well-being, opportunities, and better living conditions for our people. Transnational crime And drug trafficking networks continue to be a direct threat to all of us. We know that they know no borders. So Honduras says that hemispheric security requires legal cooperation, information exchange, and coordinated actions against these criminal economies that benefit from violence and desperation. We must continue to face this challenge in our hemisphere. For Honduras, which is a country of transit, return, destination, and or origin, immigration must have a holistic focus. We must understand its structural causes, open legal pathways, and fight the illegal trafficking of people, ensuring that the dignity of those who return to our communities is also protected. I would like to thank the people of Panama once again for their hospitality, leadership, and commitment to a General Assembly that is focused on dialogue, consensus, and solutions. 200 years ago, Panama was a meeting point for imagining a more unified America, and we can now together focus on democracy and development for our countries to achieve that. Thank you very much, Honduras. Ms. Pamela. Now we'll pass the floor to Grenada, Ambassador Tarly Francis, the permanent representative before the OAS.
Distinguished foreign ministers, heads of delegation, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As we have listened to colleagues throughout this assembly, one message has emerged clearly. The challenges confronting our hemisphere are increasingly interconnected. Economic uncertainty, natural hazards, technological disruption, migration pressures, food insecurity, energy transition, and decline in confidence in institutions affect countries regardless of size or geography. Economic strength remains essential to resilience, but resilience depends on more than economics alone. In an age of uncertainty, trust has become a foundation of resilience. Trust in institutions, between citizens and governments, trust among nations, and in the ability of multilateral institutions to deliver meaningful results. Without trust, institutions weaken, progress becomes difficult to sustain, and cooperation falters. Mr. President, Grenada expresses its sincere appreciation to the government and people of Panama for their warm hospitality and for the excellent arrangements made for this 56th regular session of the General Assembly. And my delegation commends you, Honorable Minister Martinez, on the efficient conduct of these proceedings. It is fitting that we gather in Panama, where nearly 2 centuries ago, the Amphityonic Congress of Panama advanced a vision of cooperation and solidarity among the nations of the Americas. Indeed, that aspiration to build a hemisphere founded on dialogue, partnership, and mutual respect remains as relevant today as ever. Grenada remains committed to strengthening the effectiveness, relevance, and responsiveness of this organization so that it may continue to serve the peoples of our Americas. Our countries bring different experiences to this conversation, yet all have valuable contributions to make. Grenada's experience has shown that resilience is built through investment in people, strong institutions, sound governance, and social cohesion, as well as physical infrastructure. The impacts of Hurricane Beryl on our country and Melissa on our neighbors are reminders to our region that vulnerability to natural hazards and external shocks remain a defining challenge. Building resilient economies, therefore, requires international cooperation, investment in adaptation and disaster preparedness, and stronger national capacities to withstand future shocks. Economic resilience is closely linked to energy and food security, digital transformation, human capital development, and the ability to adapt to change. At the same time, growth must be inclusive, ensuring that the benefits of development reach youth, our young people who must be included in the national and regional development project. It must reach women, rural communities, and those vulnerable to social and economic exclusion. Mr. President, the continuing situation in Haiti remains a matter of profound concern. The Haitian people continue to face extraordinary challenges, and the institutional or international community must remain engaged with consistency, with humility, and respect for the Haitian ownership of solutions, much to what OAS has been doing in the recent months especially. The restoration of security, democratic legitimacy, economic opportunity, and institutional or stability in Haiti is essential for both Haiti itself and the wider hemisphere. And so, Mr. President, Grenada also reaffirms its commitment to sovereignty, to non-intervention, the peaceful settlement of disputes, and respect for international law, principles that remain indispensable to regional peace and cooperation. With this, the preservation of democracy and democratic processes, its protection, wherever and whenever threatened, is an essential condition for orderly social, economic development and the eradication of poverty and inequality in our hemisphere. At a time when confidence in institutions is being tested, we must strengthen democratic governance, strengthen transparency, accountability, and citizen participation. Resilient societies and economies depend on resilient institutions. Mr. President, Grenada underscores the importance of both hemispheric and South-South cooperation as complementary instruments for development. Technical cooperation, knowledge sharing, trade and commerce, investment and partnerships among developing countries offer valuable opportunities to strengthen resilience and expand prosperity throughout the Americas. The future of our hemisphere will depend not only on the size of our economies, but on the quality of our institutions and the strength of our partnerships. The effectiveness of our multilateral institutions should be measured by the practical results they deliver for our citizens. In an age of uncertainty, cooperation remains our greatest strength and trust our most valuable resource. Let us build institutions that are responsive, institutions with responsive mechanisms, worthy of public confidence, partnerships that reflect the aspirations of our peoples, and an inter-American system capable of delivering practical results for future generations. Grenada stands ready to work with all our member states in advancing that common purpose. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Grenada. Le damos la palabra.
Now we will pass the floor to the representative from El Salvador, Ambassador Wendy Acevedo Castillo. Mr. President of the General Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, heads of delegation, ministers, General Secretary and Assistant General Secretary, all delegates. 200 years ago, on this same soil that received us so warmly, Simón Bolívar brought together the American republics with one key question: how can we build a community of nations that are able to protect their liberty, their sovereignty, and their common future? And 200 years later, we join with that same question. It's true that the challenges have changed, though. We don't face imperialist armies, but rather transnational crime, regional migration, polarization, and energy transition, technology advancements, and the fear that our people have lost the faith in their institutions to solve even basic problems. So before this General Assembly, we cannot just commemorate the past. We must ask ourselves sincerely if the inter-American system is responding to the real needs of the peoples of the Americas, because the true threat to our democracy is not just political instability. The true threat is the loss of trust of our citizens as our institutions cease to produce results. Mr. President, for decades, we have worked on the architecture of our hemisphere with declarations, resolutions, and mandates. However, the question from our citizens is not how many resolutions have you approved? The question is much simpler. Are we able to improve their lives? The strength of multilateralism cannot be measured by the number of meetings that we hold, but rather by the problems that we help to solve. A relevant hemispheric system for the 21st century must be less about declarations and more about transformation, less bureaucratic and closer to national realities, less focused on our processes and more committed to generating results. Because democracy that does not generate security, opportunities, and well-being will lose social legitimacy, regardless of the strength of its procedures. Ladies and gentlemen, El Salvador knows very well what happens when the state no longer meets its essential functions. For decades, violence, corruption, and social exclusion limited our abilities to develop and severely eroded citizen trust. Our challenge was not just about recovering security. It was about recovering the capacity of the state to respond to the needs of its people. And that has been the key of our national transformation, which is happening under the presidency of Nayib Bukele. No right can be exercised when a family lives under fear, when a community is controlled by criminal structures, or when a young person can find no opportunities to build their future. In my country, recovering security has been the starting point, not the end point. It has allowed us to open a new phase of human development, a phase where education incorporates digital capacities and critical thinking from childhood. In the same way, technology and AI have become tools for democratizing opportunities. Public health is strengthened through modern infrastructure, innovation, and universal access. The energy transition seeks to combine sustainability, energy security, and economic growth. In this context of citizen life, thousands of El Salvadorians start to see their country newly as a place to build their future. Security is not the end point. It is the condition that allows a society to deploy its potential. Mr. President, perhaps the biggest challenge that we face as an inter-American system is accepting one simple reality. Our citizens do not value our institutions for their intentions. They evaluate us based on our results. In a time of deep global transformation, the threat to our democracy does not come from external actors or transnational activities. It comes from the accumulated frustration when the governments cannot respond to the needs of their people. So we must not focus only on how to preserve institutions. We must look at how to make them efficient. Stability does not come from rhetoric. It comes from guaranteeing opportunities and building trust. Mr. President, 200 years ago, the nations of the Americas joined in Panama for one common future. And now we are going to do something even harder. Turn that historic ideal into something real for our people. El Salvador believes in an OAS that creates solutions, not just diagnoses, and believes in success that creates impacts in people's lives. We believe in an OAS that protects human rights and understands the inseparableness of security and human rights. If we are able to recover that, the inter-American system will be relevant for future generations. But if we cannot, our citizens will remind us that institutions exist to serve the people and not the people to sustain institutions. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Salvador.
Thank you, El Salvador. I believe we've reached the end of our list. Guyana, as the last presentation. You have the floor, Your Excellency Hugh Hilton Todd, Minister of Foreign Relations and International Cooperation.
Colleague Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Your Excellencies, Permanent Representatives, Secretary General, Ambassador Albert Ramdin, Assistant Secretary General, Ambassador Laura Hill, permanent observers, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me, Mr. Chairman, to congratulate and thank you, the government and people of Panama, for opening your doors and offering us your unstinting hospitality as the General Assembly gather for its 56th regular session and as we commemorate the bicentennial of the Afro-Ionic Congress of Panama. Whilst the newly independent nations of the Americas met in Panama in 1826, Guyana and most of the countries of the Caribbean community, apart from our sister nation of Haiti, were still under colonial rule and would be for at least another 136 years. I'm pleased to reflect that the Congress aimed to initiate unity and cooperation amongst most of the independent states of Latin America to give them agency, strength in solidarity, and the scope to chart their own path without interference. Today, the countries of the Americas, historically, politically, culturally, and economically diverse, continue engagement through the Organization of American States to forge a better, more prosperous hemisphere for dialogue, cooperation, and solidarity are at the core of our aspirations. As I've indicated in previous General Assemblies, Guyana sees strength and merit in utilizing multilateral approaches to address the common, most difficult challenges across the Americas. Strengthening peace and security remain a shared priority for our region as it addresses various forms of security challenges, including transnational organized crime. Multilateralism provides a strong foundation for the fostering of dialogue and the facilitation of collaboration and cooperation. This is particularly important for small developing states like Guyana, and in this regard, I am pleased to unequivocally associate Guyana with all of the small island developing states. Whilst multilateralism offers us some of the best avenues for recognition and amplification of our voice on matters of national, regional, and international concern, it also offers us opportunities to find common ground and advance common approaches. It is our view that together we stand in a stronger and better position to address the regional and global challenges which have an impact on our development, security, and stability. It is with this in mind that Guyana welcomes and supports the concerted effort of the OAS to support Haiti in the endeavor of re-establishing security and democratic processes and addressing the multifaceted crises that the Haitian people are facing, and facing for far, far too long. Further, I take the opportunity to assure of Guyana's support for the renewal of the mandate of the Gang Suppression Force. Guyana has repeatedly expressed its preference, commitment, and belief in multilateralism. We have been elected to the United Nations Security Council thrice and have shared with the world some of our best and brightest, like Justice Mohammed Shahabuddin, who served on the International Court of Justice, Sir Sridhar Ramphal, a former Secretary General of the Commonwealth, and Justice Ronald Bulkan, and Ambassador Riyad Insan, who respectively served and is still serving on the International Commission on Human Rights, to name a few. This preference, commitment, and belief has led His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali of Guyana to nominate Ambassador Caroline Rodriguez Burkitt for the position of Secretary General of the United Nations. And it is our hope that as many of the respective governments as possible would be able to support our candidature, which focuses on reasserting, reforming, and rallying our United Nations. The onus lies on our states to thrive for the conditions which give life and hope and aspirations of our peoples and fosters their socioeconomic advancement and well-being. Our efforts must be underpinned by dialogue, diplomacy, strengthened by the bonds of friendship and cooperation. We know that the states of the Americas face common and differentiated challenges. The variation in approaches to address these challenges is often reflected in the prioritization of the issues at the regional level. We must improve the socioeconomic opportunities, education, healthcare, and education in an inclusive and equitable manner. As many of you know, Guyana faces a very specific threat to its sovereignty and territorial integrity from Venezuela's ongoing spurious claim to 5/8 of Guyana's territory, despite the final, full, and binding arbitral award of 1899, which delimited the land boundary between our two states. Guyana has lived with this claim since 1962. Last month, the International Court of Justice heard oral presentations by both Guyana and Venezuela on the validity of the arbitral award, and it is expected that the court will issue its ruling at the end of this year or early next year. Guyana is prepared to accept the ruling. Venezuela has, however, repeatedly declared, including in the hallowed walls of the International Court of Justice, that it does not and will not recognize the court's jurisdiction, even though the court has twice judged that it has jurisdiction. We remain extremely concerned by this posture, which has direct implications for Guyana and the possible peace and security implications for the region. We also recognize the need for the OAS to be tailored to meet the needs of a diverse membership in an equitable, fair, transparent, and accountable manner in an ever-evolving international system. The charter-based mandate is clear. We must give the organization the tools and the space it needs to operate effectively. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Guyana.
With this intervention, we declare the conclusion of the dialogue of heads of delegations on the central theme of our General Assembly. This dialogue has outlined a clear roadmap and a series of shared visions, and the deliberations in these sessions have made it clear that facing the current complex challenges, multilateralism is not only a diplomatic option, but the firmest tool to safeguard democracies, ensure collective security, and the stability of our nations. We are firmly committed to move from words to action, translating all that has been said here for the benefit of citizens of the Americas. Prior to calling for the end of the session, I propose that we take note of all of the addresses made by heads of delegation here so that they will be duly recorded in the minutes of our session. So agreed. I remind you that the work of this 56th ordinary session of the General Assembly will start again at 3 p.m. this afternoon, beginning with the matter related to the Malvinas Islands. Thank you for your kind attention. We conclude this session.
Excuse.